Hey everybody, welcome to 7 Minutes in Heaven, episode 2, where you're getting your weekly-ish dose of entertaining and informative tips to help you become the couple you've always wanted to be and probably have a few more 7 Minutes in Heaven in your life. This week we have a controversial topic. Very scary. What do we got, Kat?
We had a request come in from last week to talk about a variety of topics, but the one that we have chosen is, can you make a relationship work if you have two different faith backgrounds?
Oh, that's scary. We shouldn't answer that. No. Too scary?
No, it's fine.
Okay,
We got this.
Okay, it's a very sensitive issue. So we actually called in some experts for this one because, you know, a little sensitive, right? So we were actually at a conference in Winnipeg this weekend, and we sat at a table with a bunch of relationship experts. And they have like 20 years of counseling experience. And so it was pretty helpful, I would say.
I think so, but this was a tough one even for them, although they have seen this situation before.
Yeah.
And first we'd like to start off with the ideal scenario, which is two people of the same faith going into marriage together.
Yeah.
That is by far the ideal scenario. However, we know that that's not always reality. But if you are a young couple, haven't gotten married yet, thinking about, that list of qualities you'd like to see in a spouse, having the same faith background should be number one on your list.
Yeah, I think so. It was on my list. And if Kat wasn't a strong Christian, I would have dumped her real fast. And I would have expected her to dump me as well. And it's just
Harsh, but true.
Harsh but true. But like, we had enough stuff to argue about early on in our marriage, let alone our deepest held values and belief systems and the way we make decisions. So I kind of thought that was sort of an important one. And Rick Warren actually talks about this, and he calls it life purpose compatibility. And if you're going into marriage and you have different faiths, a lot of the times you don't have the same kind of purpose or direction on life. And so it's very important to start off with that. So young people, please do that. But of course, life gets tricky sometimes, and it doesn't always work out. So
You might be in a common law relationship where you have kids already, people with different faith backgrounds. Whatever your life circumstance is, the Bible actually does talk about a concept about being unequally yoked. Now, that doesn't mean that you guys are eggs, but what it does refer to actually is oxen. And when two oxen work together side by side in tandem and they're evenly yoked, they get stuff done and they can move forward quite well. But if they're unequally yoked, and we actually talked to a friend of ours who frequently goes over to Africa in Zambia, and he's seen it when oxen aren't equally yoked and one's pulling too hard one way and the other one's not pulling hard enough or trying to go the other way, and it just doesn't work. They don't really get the work done. Well, they can, but it's a lot harder to make progress. And we think that that's a great analogy for relationships where couples find themselves in different faith backgrounds. Can it work? Short answer, yes. Yes, it can. Is it easy? No. I'm not going to say that it's easier than two couples going into a relationship with the same faith background. So when we sat down in Winnipeg and had a chat with a number of couples and asked them kind of for their feedback, what they've seen is that, number one, if you are of a different faith, you can't go into the relationship expecting that the other person is going to change. That was one piece of advice. What were some others?
Well, I just want to talk about that for a sec, because I think a lot of the times what will happen in relationships is you're always trying to change the person to be exactly how you want them to be. And it'd be so easy if you could just kind of like tell the person, like, you should do this and that would make me a lot happier. But it doesn't really work that way. You kind of have to be the change that you want to see. And so I think if you are the person of faith, you can't just fire Bible verses at them and like just like you have to come to church and like force them to do stuff. It's not going to work. And so I think that's just a helpful tip, that you have to sort of just pray about it, and it's between that person and God. It's not up to you to try to change that person. So I think you can have a positive influence by being a great person and being a great servant to the other person, but don't expect to change them. But the other things that kind of came up that we talked about were like, what do you do with in-laws? Well, that's complicated. Sometimes they're called the outlaws. And what can happen there is just huge conflicts because there's different faith things, and maybe one side of the family doesn't even show up to the wedding, or they kind of shun you, or one of those situations. Like, it can get really messy, right?
Yeah, simple things like holidays. In some faith backgrounds, they don't celebrate Christmas, or they don't celebrate Halloween or Easter or birthdays. And how are you going to work all that out? And when it comes to raising children, it adds a layer of complexity. How are the children going to be raised? If one person goes to church, let's say, for example, will the kids also go, or will they not? Will they go to a Catholic school, a Christian school, a Huda school, or public school? So basically, what you need to have figured out for sure is those fundamental value pieces in your life. You're going to have those hard discussions. And we'd recommend, before you get into a marriage situation, have those hard discussions and find out if you are actually compatible in these areas. Unfortunately, if you don't talk about these things, they could cause a lot of friction in your relationship further on.
The other one that I thought was interesting was the money situation. So how are you going to manage your finances? Like, if one person goes to church and they feel like tithing 10%, or they believe they should do that to their local church, and the other spouse is like, nope, I ain't doing that, that's going to be some serious conflict right there. So I think at the end of the day, you both kind of have to bend in this situation, and especially the person without the faith is really going to have to support the person with faith and whatever journey they're having there. And so that, I guess at the end of the day, we're just saying, based on our discussions with other people, yes, it can work. It's going to be challenging. You have to have a lot of difficult conversations, and they're not fun, but you got to do it in order to make the relationship work, because it can work. And you never know, maybe you'll end up being the same faith someday. And that pretty much does it. We're right at 7 minutes. So
if you have any other topics you want us to cover, pop them in the comments below. And if you like this content, please give it a like. We've had lots of verbal feedback from people, which is great, but please give a like to this post as well, and send us some more topics.
Yeah, see you next time. Take care.